Welcome back to Alive and Well Community's Daily Dose, your daily dose of support. And today, what we're going to be working on is enhancing that self care toolkit to make sure we're taking excellent care of ourselves during this time and hopefully beyond this time. And so I'm really excited to be joined today by an ambassador who's a certified mindfulness coach, as well as a certified yoga instructor, and also one of our amazing ambassadors in the greater Kansas City area. So, Celestine, thank you so very much for joining us today on today's Daily Dose.
Well, thank you, Sean. And it's so nice to finally meet you. And I really appreciate you inviting me to this space. Just
Well,
happy to be here.
we're really glad to have you as I'm excited to learn more about, my own mindfulness practice, recognizing that mindfulness isn't really, about a destination. It's this journey of continuing to enhance our toolkit. So I'm excited to get to learn from you today and really
Yeah.
build my mindfulness toolkit because we know not every tool works for every person. And so it's about finding the tools that really support us.
Yeah.
So I really want to turn it over to you
Okay.
and talk about mindfulness so I can learn right alongside of everyone else.
Okay, so I love this slide. It's really asking, is your mind full or are you being mindful? And it's actually something that you get to choose moment by moment. So, like in any given moment, you can go from a mind that's full of busyness, to just pausing and recollecting yourself and becoming more mindful. So that's what I love about the mindfulness practice. And my big goal has been to demystify that practice and just demystify the practice of yoga in general.
So when you say demystify, can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean?
Yes, absolutely. So when I came into yoga, probably like in 2008, I was finding that there wasn't really anybody of color in spaces with me here in the Midwest in Kansas City. And so I eventually went on to yoga teacher training and was realizing that the price was really costing us out of the practice. So I became really ambitious and wanted to become a yoga teacher, which I did and was certified in 2012. And then what I found was all this ambition, only to find that most people of color weren't there because we felt that it compromised our faith or our religion. We were uncomfortable with speaking Sanskrit, which I never really did. And just a lot of the Hindu part of it, we were just threatened by that, right? And I was just determined to show that this practice really helped me. And when I went through my certification in 2012, my family was just going through a big shift.
Hmm.
And so it was a practice that helped me to grind and to ground myself. But even more so, on my journey to bring yoga to the community, I stumbled across Nairobi Institute, which was an organization out in Oakland, California, that was teaching yoga in communities of color and trying to break the stereotype. And yes, I started that a piece of yoga with my daughter in 2012. We started our practice together. And so we went on this big mission. I purchased the curriculum and we eventually went out and trained with Nairobi because we were so impressed with what they were doing. They were going into the schools, into community centers and prisons, and just trying to change the name, the face, and the race and the zip code of yoga, right? Just trying to demystify it and show that this practice was healthy for all. And so they knew that going into the underserved communities, there would be a lot of pushback. And so they were able to break that stereotype by taking away the whole concept of just yoga and showing how that mind body connection could make a difference for us. From there, I went on to Off the Mat into the World, which was an organization also in California. So they're cutting edge there. And Off the Mat was saying, okay, take your yoga practice off the mat. Take
Mm.
this grounding, take this practice that's serving you off the mat, go back out into community and find a project, a saver, a service that you can offer because this practice is grounding you. Now you have tools to go out and be of service.
Oh, I love this kind of giving and supporting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and there's just more initiatives out on the West Coast that are doing these types of works. I'm also a part of Yoga Body Image, which is like changing what the body looks like, what our concept is of the white yogi. You know, you got to be skinny, thin, rich, right? So Yoga Body Image is saying let's debunk that as well, and so we see all body shapes. If you see Diane Bondi or Teo Drake, these are people that have started to kind of like break that stereotype.
I love that, really understanding that we don't have to be in a yoga studio to
Right.
uh,
Yes, because yoga is beyond just the physical postures, right? It really is. It's a practice that you could take with you all day, you know, throughout. And that's how I ended up with Alive and Well was through Resilient KC seemed to be the perfect platform back when it started to introduce some of the practices that I was wanting to bring to Kansas City because most people were just looking at the physical practice and what it did for them. But what do you do when you're done working yourself out like that, right? And yoga was never meant like to be like a workout, right? We got hot yoga, you know, we've got all these things that we've done here in the Western countries to change what it was really about.
oh, I love that. So really getting back to the roots of yoga and the roots
Yeah,
in the community.
right, right. Yeah,
Wonderful. So I know you have some techniques to walk us through, and
I
I'm really
do.
excited that you're going to use me as your kind of guinea pig to practice on
I
these.
am.
Like,
I am, and I'm excited. And the main thing that I want to share is that this is a practice you can use anytime, anywhere, any place. I mean,
mhm,
you don't need a yoga mat to practice a mindfulness, to have a mindfulness practice. You can practice yoga mindfully, but there's also practices you can do just sitting in your chair, if you're standing in line at the grocery store, anytime you're under pressure. And my go-to practice is my breath. Always,
mhm.
always, always. Because what we do know is that our breath can change the way we feel, but how we feel can also change our breath, right? So I will take us into a short little practice. And the way I want to open this practice is just bringing our awareness to our breath. To just take a nice seated position, maybe plant our feet under our knees, our shoulders over our hips, and just begin to bring awareness to our breath. And the first thing I'd like to do is bring your awareness to sound. So I'm going to sound the bell and just have you to take in that bell chime. When you can no longer hear the bell, I'm going to have you to just raise your hand. Beautiful, beautiful. Sound the bell again. And I want you to listen to the bell for as long as you can hear it. And when you can no longer hear the bell, I want you to raise your hand. One more time, I'm going to chime the bell. When you can no longer hear it, I'm going to have you to raise your hand. Beautiful. Bringing awareness to your breath. Sit up nice and tall. Empty your lungs. Breathe in one. Breathe out. Breathe in two, breathe out, breathe in three, and breathe out. Maybe flutter your eyes open and bring yourself back into the room. I'm going to chime the bell one more time. And when you can no longer hear it, just raise your hand. Beautiful. So now that we're all back together, eyes open, I want you to interlace your fingers, palms in your lap. Maybe your gaze is down. We're going to inhale and just follow our hands as we raise them slowly up above our head. And then we'll exhale, lower our arms down. But we're going to add count to this, right? So we're going to inhale, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. One more time. Inhale, on count. Exhale. And then just how do you feel? Do you feel any stretch in your upper body, in your arms, any tingling in your arms? Just bringing your awareness to how you're feeling at this moment, right? Yes. So we're going to take our hands, place them on top of our knees. We're going to do what we call robin. So with robin, it's just a really nice way to open up your back, open up your shoulders. So we're just going to slowly bring our heart forward. And then exhale, round the shoulders in, tuck the chin in, stretch across the back. Inhale, open up, chest comes forward. Exhale, round the back. Inhale one more time, heart comes forward. Exhale, round the back. And this time we're going to make it as big or as small as you want. So you can inhale and take your chest higher, head can go back, nice stretch in the back. You can exhale, just round, round, round the robin. Chin comes to your chest. Nice stretch, draw the belly in. Inhale again, heart comes forward, round the back. Exhale, let it all go. Inhale, come back up to a nice neutral seated position. We're going to take our hands to our heart. We're going to inhale and our hands will go forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Beautiful. Open up. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Nice stretch. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Beautiful. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Hands to our heart. Just be here. Take it all in. How do we feel in our bodies? Is our mind busy? Is our mind full? Are we being mindful? How did it feel to open up across your chest? Any sticky places? Any places, any areas of resistance?
Yeah.
I want you
Yeah.
to open your arms wide and cross your arms over, crisscross applesauce, hug yourself. Chin tucks in. Inhale, open up nice and wide. Crisscross applesauce, other direction. Give yourself a nice big hug. Tuck the chin in, round the shoulders. And one more time, open up. And maybe hug yourself one more time. Bring your hands to your heart. Take your awareness to your breath. With just those few little stretches, did you feel yourself open up maybe just a little bit more? How do you feel?
I'm feeling good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. So, one thing I would say is that when we're practicing and bringing awareness to our breath, to really think about like how you're feeling after a practice. Like one way is to like take your hand to your heart and to just feel for your heartbeat, which there's several places, right? You can do that on your wrist, on your neck, but just to find where your heartbeat is. And to take into consideration, like, is your heart beating fast or slow or deep or shallow? And then to think about, does your heart beat faster on the inhale or the exhale, right? Because generally, most people's heart beats faster on an inhale,
Hmm.
but it could be either way. It's just whatever. Everybody's different, but most of our heart beats faster on an inhale. So when we inhale, we take in more energy, right? It kind of fires us up. When we exhale, heartbeat slower, we start to calm down, right? And so it's really something when people say, just breathe, like when you get all worked up and you're anxious, and somebody says, you just need to slow down and breathe. There is something behind that, right? Because just to like regulate your breath, just to kind of begin to kind of slow your breath. And even when I think about mindfulness practices, like when I say you can Oh, I was looking at a question. Can you do these stretches standing? Absolutely. Absolutely. And the only reason I didn't do some of the practices standing was I was afraid like where I would go out of the frame. Right. So I always start the practice seated anyway. And that accommodates a lot more people because you have people that maybe don't feel like they'd be as steady. But there's also, you're sitting in a chair, so you also have the chair next to you if you do feel unsteady. Because we're trying to address all bodies,
Hmm.
right? So there's a practice seated and then there's practices standing. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I have to say, during those stretches, I knew I was holding some tension in my neck and in my back,
Absolutely.
and it really helped to start to open up and ease that tension, and also
Absolutely.
draw my awareness to where else my body was tight and start to release that. And so I
Absolutely.
like that
Yeah,
just
nobody has to
feels
know what you're doing. I mean, you're just, yeah, right. It's for you, right? So nobody has to know what you're doing. And that's another beautiful thing about having a mindfulness practice because so much of where we are in our life, especially now,
Mhm.
we have to take mindful moments constantly. And I know for me, I'm in a house with four people now, and it wasn't by design. I mean, I didn't plan it. I guess it was by design, but I did not plan that. My mom was visiting and she got ill while she was here, and it turned into a chronic illness, right? It turned out that there was a reason she was here. So now I'm taking care of her, and my son was visiting, and when she got sick, he stayed. And then we got all shut down. So it's my husband and my mom and my son. And, I thought we would drive each other crazy, but we've really learned to give each other space. And the moments for me sometimes can be just stopping and cooking a good meal,
Mhm.
and knowing they're going to appreciate it because we are eating at home more. And then so many of my cookbooks are tabbed from when my kids were little and they would pick recipes. So we're all sitting around reminiscing and, just making the best of it. So I think that there's a reason why all of this is happening. So if we weren't mindful before,
Hmm.
right, we're going to need it now, even if we're driving ourselves crazy in the house by ourselves.
Yeah. Now, I know you have more to share with us, and I'm eager to
Yes,
kind of
absolutely.
enhance
Okay.
everything that you have to share.
So, this is a quote by John Kabat-Zinn, who is basically like the godfather of mindfulness. A lot of people forget because there's all these big mindfulness initiatives. But I
Hmm.
was reading John Kabat-Zinn before we had this whole big mindfulness movement to come about. And John Kabat-Zinn says that mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non judgmentally, and as if your life depended on it. And what arises is nothing other than awareness itself. And so, what he was doing, he was going in hospitals and offering mindfulness practices, and they were studying patients' outcomes that were under chronic stress and chronic illnesses. And so, he was having them to go into their bodies and breathe and become more aware of how they were feeling and to be able to calm their nervous system. And they were getting great results. And so he was really the godfather of mindfulness. I
Wonderful.
didn't see her question, but
Oh, no,
um,
just making a comment that
okay,
really about the reason needing to stand, and for some people it may be more calming while standing, for others
absolutely.
while sitting.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about mindfulness as well, right? It's like this is your practice. And remember that even if you choose to do a yoga practice, it's your practice. You make it yours. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. I have students that, during practice, maybe they're not able to stand. And so they may just lie there the whole practice. But for them, that's their practice. It's for you. It's designed for you to do whatever you need.
Wonderful. No, and on purpose in the present moment, I feel like I get so caught up in what I need to do and getting everything
Yeah.
taken care of, and so it seems like part of my mind is always in the future, even if I'm working on something, that I'm not
Yes.
purposely present.
Right, right, right. And that's the whole concept, right? It's not woo-woo. It's not anything that it's not rocket science. I think I had that in one of my slides. It's like, one, it's not rocket science. There we go. It's not. And I really want to stress that. It's not rocket science. And it just takes practice. And practice doesn't mean that you have to um, do anything big or different. It's just being in the moment where you are. Just taking the time to just stop, like when you're feeling yourself frazzled, maybe just to stop and come back to your breath and regroup and to do whatever task that you're doing just a little more mindfully, just to like be in that moment, you know. And another thing that I like to share is like breath is something that is always with us as long as we're alive, right? As long as we're alive, we have breath. So breath is never in the past, it's never in the future. Our breath is current. So that is like our current on the spot resource. You can always stop and take a breath in those moments where you're just frazzled. So whether you can do a movement or not, the thing with mindful movement is that static practices oftentimes can kind of stoke the trauma. Like if you're having any stress or any trauma that you're going through, sometimes just sitting and meditating and just trying to be completely still can kind of re-trigger emotions. And
Hmm.
so that's the beauty of having a practice that incorporates movement, which was what I was drawn to with Niroga. Was Niroga says we have to use our bodies to dissolve the stress. And I think that that's what's intriguing a lot of times when you see people running and jogging. It just looks like they're just in a different world, right? And
Hmm.
then it becomes addicting because they are in another world. They're releasing those endorphins and it can be pretty exciting and it kind of takes them to that other place. But I always also share in my yoga practice or in any time we're doing any type of mindfulness practice that let us come out on the other side a little better, a little more focused, a little more grounded, right? And maybe we come out with all those busy thoughts in our heads, and maybe like one thing will come together for us. And I think that's another part of how I feel about what's going on now. And I was listening to an Essence Wellness Summit, and Ayana Van Zant was saying, like, the universe is asking us to just,
Mm.
and we are going to come out of this, and we need to come out of it on the other side better humans. So we need to use this time to practice being still within, like even being still within our movements, right? Just finding stillness even in our movements. So, yeah.
So I I love that notion that, you know, it's not rocket science. It's what works for us
Yeah.
to be present in the
Right.
moment, and that'll be
Right.
different for everyone.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And just
And we can't
recognize,
tell people how they should feel,
yeah,
right? We can't tell people how they should feel or what they should be doing. But I'm just offering that, hey, here's a practice. Take what you need, leave the rest behind.
mhm. And then that notion that we just need to practice it, not when we're just under stress and feeling that additional pressure or that sense of
Right,
overwhelm, but taking the opportunity to routinely incorporate those.
right, right. Just make it a part of your life practice, right? Just
Mhm,
bringing that awareness to your breath, because where we are in any moment really defines where we are. And check how we're breathing sometimes. I'll tell you what, we don't breathe. We're breathing, but we do not breathe as deep and as long. We don't take in the breath that we need to take in. We really breathe very shallow.
mhm.
There's so much more to our breath, and we really breathe very shallow, you know. Yeah. Okay, so that's another slide that says there's people that don't believe in this, but I really feel strongly about the 10-90 rule, which is says 10% of our lives is determined by what happens to us, but 90% of it is determined by how we react. And that's another part of having a mindfulness practice, right? Is that rather than to react, we kind of learn to respond, to
Mhm,
take the reaction out of everything we do, that knee-jerk reaction. And we do see, I mean, like, that's been one of the beauties for my practice. And my daughter, that's her mantra, is that she just really feels like yoga saved our life. And it really did. And it saved our relationship. She was a teenager going off to college. And she still says to this day, like, Mom, you're a different person ever since you started practicing yoga. But I can step away, you know. I mean, and sometimes I see her and myself as well, and she and I, and it's like you got to have that last word. But then as you practice, you start finding, no, I don't have to have the last word. It's okay. And it just gives you a moment to kind of like walk away, and you never regret that you didn't say that last hard thing,
mhm.
unless it's going to save somebody's life. If it's not critical, we don't have to say that last hard thing, right? And that's what I always feel better when I just like, I can save that one. I don't need that right now. Yeah. And so the three essential practices that I like to really emphasize are mindful eating, mindful movement, and mindful breathing. So we did a brief movement practice, and we did mindful breathing as a part of our movement practice. But Sean said that he would join me in a mindful eating practice. So I'm going to mimic that I brought a raisin, which I did not, but Sean actually had raisins. Who does that, right? So I'm going to share a mindful eating practice with you that I really do love. And mindful eating is like the gateway into mindfulness. It's such a gateway. It's such a good way to kind of crack into the practice. So
Mhm,
with mindful eating, we'll just have that raisin in the palm of our hand, and we look at the raisin with our eyes. So we're taking the process of eating with all our four senses, right? Our eyes, our nose, the smell, the taste, the touch. So to look at that raisin in your hand, you're just kind of rolling it around in your hand and you're taking in all the textures, its shape, and its colors. Just rolling it around. And then you take that raisin and you smell it. What does it smell like? And so you're beginning to take in the sense of a raisin, right? And then you take that raisin and you put it in your mouth. And you do not bite it yet. Just put it in your mouth. And just roll it around on your tongue and feel its texture. And maybe just feel the moisture that's building up in your mouth as you salivate and begin to think about what that raisin's going to taste like. Maybe it's starting to break down from the acid in your mouth. And then take one bite of the raisin. And then just kind of roll it around again in your mouth. You're taking in more of its flavor and building that anticipation and just really savoring that raisin. And now you can chew that raisin. Just slowly take in its flavor and taste and the anticipation of it reaching down into your stomach and passing the throat. And then I invite you to swallow the raisin. And just feel how it nurtures you. And how does it feel going down? And would you like one more raisin? And so that's like such a great practice, like to slow down and enjoy our meals. And I often get people, I get these humongous raisins from Sprouts, right, that I hand out at the practices when I'm facilitating, and people go, "Oh my God, that's the biggest raisin I've ever seen." But by the end of the practice, people are like, either one, they've never even thought about a raisin in that way, like they see raisins in a whole different light. But then, like, the conversation that's engaged is, you know, looking at how we eat every day. We eat so mindlessly. We eat because it's lunchtime. We eat while we're working. We don't really appreciate the meals that are cooked for us or that are prepared for us. And to put the fork down and savor that bite and just enjoy the thought of how this meal got to the table, how many hands and backs and things that sweat to get that food to the table, and then the blessing that you're able to have that meal. So it's just kind of savoring every moment. So
You know, I guess I've been eating so mindlessly recently that it's was kind of surprising that, like, remembering I could feel texture with my tongue,
yeah, right.
because I don't know when's the last time I've taken the opportunity to really pause and
That's great.
notice the texture of my food with my tongue.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
So,
Okay, so here we're talking about the impacts of chronic stress and trauma, and a lot of that depends on how long the stress is lasting, or how severe the situation. Impacts of chronic stress impacts our ability to focus, our ability to self-regulate, and our ability to adapt to stress. And most important is our ability to empathize. And what better time than now to build a sense of empathy, right? Because if we can't empathize, it really impacts our relationships with our families, our friends, our neighbors. And right now, more than ever, we really need to have empathy for one another. We have to really begin to be patient with one another and to check in on each other. And I think about, I was listening to NPR had a local rabbi on, I think it was Rabbi Levine, but he and a Christian minister were talking about what's going on now and how churches are having to do services online. And I think it was during the time that our governor was saying that we could not have church service. It had to be less than 10 people, and people were fighting it. But what Rabbi Levine said was that before God sends the plague, he sends the cure. I didn't like his answer. He said the answer that he sent ahead was the internet. And I've been one of those people like people need to get off of it. I mean, like there can be too much social media, too much, and people really um, some can go over a little deep. But with having the internet and the practice that we've had to get used to that tool, now it's becoming more of a resource because we are going to church online and we can join anybody's service online. And then the Christian minister was saying that what we have to remember is that the church was never the building. We are the church. And what that made me think about was we can't hide behind the brick and mortar anymore, that we are the church and how we carry ourselves now, we're just a lot more accountable. So all the fuss about, well, I don't go to church, and well, we are the church. So God is, not to preach, but I just feel like we are being watched, right? Everything is removed. We don't have that comfort of, well, I go to church on Sunday, so I'm a better person than you. I back out of the driveway, I'm going to church, and everybody else is standing. But now we're getting a chance to see who we are front and center, and how we're serving our community, and how we're serving one another, and how we're taking care of ourselves. Maybe service is just taking care of ourselves, because the community is better if we're better, if we're taking care of ourselves better. Maybe we don't have the capacity to always help someone else, but helping ourselves is a good emulation of helping others and being that example.
Yeah, I really like that notion of like we have to recognize how stress impacts us. That
Right,
it's not just those physical impacts we experience from stress,
right,
but
right,
thinking about how is it that I then have the ability to empathize with those I live with under the same roof as I'm stressing out about whether it's
right.
work or what's happening with the
Yeah.
economy or the unknown. And then thinking
Mhm.
about also how I'm empathetic and I show up for my
Right.
community at large.
Yeah. 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 And and one of the things that Ayana Van Zant was saying was when we think about like all the restrictions we have on us and we feel like all our freedoms have been taken away, she said that she thought about our ancestors
Mm,
and how they were on those boats chained down with little food. And here we still have the freedom to do so many things. We can still go get our food. We can get what's necessary. We can take a walk. We can walk around our apartments or our homes. We still have a level of free. We can go get our medicines. And there are people out there that do need our help. So we can still serve and volunteer. Those are essential things, right? So I really appreciated her saying that and kind of bringing it home, because it's okay to be at home more too. Like for me, it's been like sitting in my stuff. Like it's easy to just get up and get out of my stuff,
mhm.
but to have to sit in it, I think I've cleaned up a whole lot more, just picking up all the stuff that's sitting around me. And then the other thing is we can go for a walk, you know? And it's been really awesome to see more people out walking and to see these dogs that just sit at home and get fed. I looked at a dog the other day and he looked up at me like, "What are you looking at?" Like he hated me and I was that walk. So yeah, I think that we just have to make the best of it and just try to come out of this thing better, like taking care of ourselves better and appreciating each other.
Absolutely. Now I know you
So
have
this
resources to share.
Yes, so I'm supposed to share this. I want to share this with you guys. So this is the Mako method, and this is my daughter Amanda that's in the practice with me, and she's created this download that gives you like 50 additional mindfulness tips and practices that are yours to take with you and to have anytime you need them. It's a great tool, it's a great resource. She put a lot of work into it. That's Amanda there on the front. And she's just really passionate about this work, and I'm just really proud of her for that. So please do take advantage of that download at the Mako Method.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I have to say thank you so much for teaching us some new tools for you just also have this amazingly calming presence. So I appreciate you coming in for myself, and I'm sure our viewers
Oh,
appreciate this as well. So thank you so very much for deepening our insights into
yeah.
mindfulness, for helping to expand
Thank
our
you, Sean.
and and for
Yeah.
those of you who are joining us today, either live or after the fact, my challenge to you is going to be try to do some of those mindful stretches as
Yeah,
you realize where you may be holding on to tension in your body
you're right.
to help really alleviate that, so we can be fully present and also, again, as you mentioned, really have that empathy for
Yeah,
ourselves, for our loved ones, for our community.
yeah.
So a big thank you.
Thank
Uh,
you, Sean. Thank
we
you.
appreciate you. And for those
Yeah,
of you who are joining us, also make sure that you share this daily dose with someone you know who could use a dose of support. And in a time
absolutely.
like this, couldn't we all use a little extra
Yeah.
support?
And
So
thank you, Sean, for creating this platform.
thank you so much for joining us. We're so appreciative. And for our viewers, we hope to see you back here tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Dose. You all take care.
Thank you.